Welcome back, everyone. That was a very quick 5 minutes. I'm sure it was all for all of you as well. So thank you for sticking with us today. We really appreciate it. The speakers so far have been fascinating, and we have one more to go. So it is my pleasure to introduce our last speaker of the day, Pauline Hoffman. As a certified professional organizer, Pauline is an expert in providing solutions that transform people from chaos and confusion to clarity and calm, aligning their internal and external environment so that they live and work in flow. Pauline brings to the platform not only her professional knowledge to living and succeeding with a traumatic brain injury, but also firsthand of living and growing a business while recovering from a brain injury. Welcome, Pauline. There we go.
Okay, can I share my screen, Michelle?
Yes, absolutely. Rachel will make you co-host.
Okay, thank you.
You should be good to go now.
Okay, thanks. All right, well, we've had a day full of amazing information. And what I want to talk to you about now is about relearning your day-to-day living. For those of you who have had a traumatic brain injury or have been involved with someone that has had one, you will realize that day-to-day living all of a sudden changes. So what I want to talk to you about today is how to function in your day-to-day living and working in your new reality at this time and how to move forward. We need to understand why systems and organization in our environment will assist you in doing what you need to do and enjoy what you want to do, all while preserving your energy to heal and move forward. And lastly, to work with your professional team and your support around you to assist you in simplifying your life. In a split second, our life can change, and that did happen to me. I was out for just a casual bike ride in my small town of Lincoln, and I was going down the road and a guy decided to turn into me and turn down the other road and hit me, and I flew and hit the pavement, and the next thing I know, somebody's behind me, and I was very thankful that night because I happened to have a couple angels. There was a volunteer firefighter and a nurse right there at the scene. So things did progress very slowly in my mind, but I know it was very quickly as I was taken away to the hospital and so on and so forth. What I did realize as the weeks followed was that what happens that night isn't always, and the diagnosis you get that night isn't always what you continue to live with. We all have stories of our own, and some of them are great, and some of them are not so great. But following a brain injury, what I did find the most difficult hurdle was teaching friends and family how your life has changed. Most people can relate and understand the limitations if you broke your leg. They come in, they see you, they bring a meal, and they see your broken leg and say, oh, how many weeks for the cast? And they understand what's going on. Day-to-day tasks take longer to accomplish. It's been a little bit longer to get to work, a little bit longer to make dinner, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, can you sit down with a book or get caught up in your paperwork and or enjoy time with family? Absolutely you can, as long as you're able to sit with your leg up or go somewhere on your crutches. Now think about a TBI. Well, you've started to heal. You start to do a little bit more. You actually can get up and go to the bathroom without someone helping you. You can maybe get up and make a tea, but you're still mentally exhausted every time you do one of those activities. But a friend walks in the door and sees you sitting there with a cup of tea and does not see what we are feeling. And I think that was my biggest hurdle for me mentally to get through and push through to figure out how to tell people. So I did start to use that analogy about the broken leg and say to them, you know, if it's 6 months down the road after you've broke your leg, you're going to have days that you use it too much and it's going to swell and it's going to hurt and you're going to have to sit down that night. Well, that's what happens with a TBI, but unfortunately in a lot more baby steps. I was very thankful. I was a business owner. I had great people working with me and they were able to help me out. As a mom, I was able to be at home and heal that way, figuring out my new reality and my new normal. Understanding the simplifications of your life. Take everything, simplify it a little bit more. Systems can really help you with this. And the other people that can really help you with this, as you see on this diagram here, is the psychological help, the speech pathologist, the occupational therapist, the nutritionist. All those people can help you along your way. But remember, the biggest thing you have to remember is take everything in baby steps and make sure that you don't expand all your energy in one day, go into 2 or 3 appointments and spread them out. And that was something that I did kind of learn along the way that I'm going to tell you a little bit about as we move on here. A lot of occupational therapists will work with us as professional organizers. And what I'm going to talk to you about now is what I was helping people with before my accident. But as I had my accident, I realized that there are a lot more things that I can help them with now. So way to get organized when you're dealing with a TBI. I think my biggest thing was setting things into chunks. So if it takes me a half an hour to get dressed in the morning, and I'm at that stage of healing where I really only have a couple hours of really good day, then is that what I want to do? I want to get dressed, or do I maybe want to take a half an hour and do my paperwork first? And what that means is, what is the most important thing to you to get done in that day that will help you feel good at the end of the day? Before your TBI, you were probably able to do your paperwork while you were having your breakfast, and then you ran out the door and you went to work, or you looked after your family, and you come home, you make dinner, and all these things just kind of mesh together. But now we have to take a look at them and say, okay, so I do want to, get my paperwork done today. I do want to get up and have a shower and get dressed and feel good. I know I've got an appointment. So there's my 4 hours of energy. And many of you know that have dealt with it or have had people in your life, you will realize that as we go on, we are able to add more time to our day and able to bring different things into our life that we can add on and add on. I am 9 years out from this accident now, and to this day, I know that if I have a full day like I've had today at this conference, and then I have another meeting later on, that tomorrow needs to be more of a physical day as opposed to a day with a lot of screens, a lot of reading, a lot of thinking, and that type of thing. So when we're starting to heal, the biggest thing, and I think every speaker talked about it today, is gauge yourself, take the time, and don't be hard on yourself. What is going to work for Joe is not going to work for Sam. And we have to remember that any little thing that is an accomplishment at the end of the day is great. And being an A personality, which I'm sure some of you are, that can be difficult. So we have time management, as I briefly already talked to you about, is a big one. And I think my biggest thing was conserving energy. I wanted to make sure that I conserved energy so that if I did have a task I wanted to do, or a friend called and wanted to have a visit, I could visit with them. One of the worst things is to see an opportunity coming up and you're knowing that you've got 5 minutes of eligible time left with your brain and your body. Remember, resting and sleeping are a huge part of the recovery. That was a difficult thing for me to understand. But as I realized, it was huge. Resting and sleeping, and resting with your eyes closed. When we rest with our eyes closed, we tend to, first of all, block out the visual clutter. And as a professional organizer, visual clutter, it causes drains a lot of energy, which a lot of us don't realize. But also the other thing is that when you go to do something new that you hadn't done before, you often realize that, okay, so for me to do that activity, I need to give myself 45 minutes, but I also need assistance with that. So think about those things, manage your time efficiently. It doesn't mean you have to write everything down. You just get to know how the time works for you. One of the things I did realize when I started to go out into the community was the power of having your eyes shut and resting completely. I remember the one day that I thought I'd finally be able to go up and get the mail. And so I did, and I'm a small town, and I go into the post office and I come out and somebody stops me to see how I am. And I realized after about 2 minutes talking to them that I had to actually say to them, I'm sorry, I have to go. I am not going to be able to stand up much longer. That was a rude awakening for me, but it also made me realize that I needed to take the time to manage that time and put those things in. The other thing is never feel bad excusing yourself. They looked at me that day and I looked good, but I needed to tell them that I wasn't and that I needed to leave. Driving was a huge visual exhaustion for me, which isn't for everybody, but it was for me. And till this day, if I was to go to a 2-3 hour drive, I would make sure that I had another driver with me that could also take over. Just a couple strategies I want to talk to you about. Oh, before I do that, 1 second. I did talk about visual clutter. When you see this picture here, you can see that there's a lot of stuff going on, so on and so forth. It's not necessarily just clutter there, but it's visual clutter on your screen. It's visual clutter on our phones, all that type of thing. Remember, all of that stuff that you're seeing has to be processed and takes energy. So a couple strategies that I found worked really, really well for me was talk to text. Okay, instead of having to look at a keyboard, especially my first 8 to 12 months, instead of having to look at a keyboard, I pushed the talk to text, wrote everything down that way, whether I was texting, whether I was emailing, or whether I was making a reminder note. The other thing that was a huge, huge, huge thing for me was audiobooks. I do have an A personality and I do run a business, and I would often think, oh, I know where the girls are today. If I could only prepare those few things for them so that it'd be easier for them when they head out tomorrow. But I knew I had to have a rest before I could do that. So the audiobooks were amazing. I would just pop them in, my headphones in, and I'd lay down and I'd listen to them. Quite often when I went back, I'd have to go back a chapter because I'd fall asleep, but that's okay. What it did for me was it took me into a different world and I was able to listen and relax. The other thing is paper systems, and this is a big thing as a professional organizers that we do often help people with brain injuries, people with anxiety of a lot of clutter around, lots of different types of people that need this help, because paper is extremely overwhelming for a lot of people. So what we do is we help them set up systems and so on and so forth, so that they have the paperwork they need as they go through their different things. Insurance, your lawyer, your exercise papers, your school bills, your school papers, your bills, whatever the case may be. And then lastly is the memory. And I think that has been a huge thing for me, is that the memory is never as good. And as we get older, I don't think it ever is. But what I've done for myself is quit beating me up about things that I forget. I'm using my notes in my phone. I use my alarms. I use my reminders. You know what? Once I put it in here, I don't forget it. And it's amazing. The alarm goes off. Oh, I gotta leave now. So, you know, we have the technology to help ourselves do these types of things. Why not use them? Why not use them to our best ability? So do we want to go to questions, Michelle?
Oh, sorry, I'm just trying to get it.
Sorry.
Sure, yes. So do you want to stop sharing your screen just so we can get both of us larger on the screen? So again, if people have any questions, please submit them under the Q&A box or under the chat. Thank you so much, Pauline. I think we can all use better organization in our life. I know that when I look at my desk in front of me, I've been using Post-it notes. I've got about 20 of them. I've got my notebook. I've got, so are there any, and we do need to leverage technology. You talked about the voice to text. Are there any apps that you have used in the past that you found helpful? Or anything that you can suggest that people can use? We always, almost everyone has a phone, but any kind of apps or any other technology that people could find helpful?
So on the phone, the talk to text was great, but also what I didn't realize was, now I have a Mac. I'm not really versed on Windows and stuff, but I'm sure those applications are out there. But I know with all my emails, I would do talk to text with them, but also I could read them. All I had to do was highlight the email and it would read to me. And so that was a big thing that I found really helpful also, was because I didn't have to look at the screen, or I could dim it down and I could do it that way. The other one that, oh, that's just gone out of my head. There's another app on there that I used for the longest time. And what it did was it helped build your memory. And the name of it is gone on me. I can totally see it. It's an orange icon with a brain on it. But yeah, it'll come to me. But yeah, that was really good. Just doing memory challenges, which would help you increase your memory. I did those too. And then I just use notes for all my other stuff. And I have alarms and notifications on my calendar. And I think that is really helpful. Like, I had to be somewhere today at 1 o'clock, so I made sure I put an alarm on at 12:30, and boom, good to go.
Yeah, we've heard in the past people using all sorts of like Post-it notes all over their house. So another question we received is how would you suggest for a loved one or family members, how could they bring up the topic of home organization or organization for a loved one with brain injury?
Okay, so what I find that the biggest thing is that they still, like I had mentioned about people that come in, they still see that person the same as they were before, especially if they don't have any physical injuries on them, right? So what I often say to them is, let's simplify things. Let's clear the clutter, and everything that person has to deal with or work with, let's make sure that it's simplified. We don't need, like, a perfect example is quite often in a kitchen, they'll have numerous ladles or numerous flippers or whatever the case may be. Let's simplify that. Let's bring it down to one or two. You know, we can work with that. Then they're not searching, they're not looking for all these different things. Let's simplify the amount of stuff that you have in your home that they are dealing with on a daily basis.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, and make them understand. I've used that broken leg thing so many times, and you know, people get it then, right?
Yeah. What I think you touched on something there, breaking it into smaller steps. It can be overwhelming to look at, you know, your whole life and how do you organize every aspect of it. So looking at what are some of the smaller steps that you can take. Someone just mentioned, I'm just going to mention this before I forget, there's a nonprofit organization called BEST, and maybe you've heard of this, Brain Education Strategies Technology, that has created a TBI focused app suite, bestconnections.org. They have a lot of education and support for TBI related cognitive issues. Are you familiar with that one?
I am not, but that's excellent. That must have come into effect since I was injured. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think there's lots of lots of technologies coming out every day. So if you could, I mentioned this in our first speaker today, if you could say the top 3 things that someone could do right away to organize themselves, what would that be?
So I would say the number one thing is your self-care. You know, figure out what you're going to do during the day that's going to help you relax. And my big one was about every half hour, I would stop, close my eyes, relax. And when I was right in the early stages, I would definitely make sure that I had a morning nap and an afternoon nap and those types of things. So schedule them in first. The next thing I would do for organization is like we had just talked about a few minutes ago, is have the people in your home understand really what is going on. And if you need a third party, bring them in, like ourselves or like your OT or that type of thing, bring them in, get them to understand what's going on. The last thing you need in your life is stress. So give everybody a task and help them get organized that way. And the last thing I would say is the biggest thing for organization is that keep it simple. Remember, this too shall pass and things will get better and you'll be able to start doing more and more. But let's keep everything simple right now. Let's keep the dishes simple, the laundry simple. You know, let's, if you have your drugs, let's put them all in a basket. Let's keep that simple. Just keep everything really minimalized. We don't have to have fancy stuff. And yeah, so that's the best way. Yeah.
That's great advice. So we have another question. During your recovery, did you find it difficult to want to complete tasks if they felt overwhelming? And when you got overwhelmed and felt defeated, how were you able to overcome that? That's a big question.
No, I totally know where they're coming from, though. I can totally get that. So yeah, there was a lot of times that I thought, you know, I think I can do this today. You know, I'm going to go onto the computer. I'm going to focus. I'm going to work on this for my business, so on and so forth. And it wouldn't work. I would break down. My brain would stop. And until I had this, I never really realized that your brain can actually stop. It just does. And the biggest thing I dealt with was, again, breaking up into pieces. If I thought that job was going to take 3 hours, let's break it up into C4, 3/4 hours or whatever the case may be. And then the other big thing was not beat up myself. If I thought I had more energy that day and I went to do that task and it didn't pan out, go down, lay down, put on the awesome audiobook you're listening to and go to another world. That was the biggest thing I did, was to accomplish things. And then, you know what, I got up and I was maybe able to go back and finish that task. So I guess the biggest thing is knowing when you need to stop. Don't push past that. And secondly, knowing what you need to do to look after yourself so that you can, you know, continue on.
That's great. So here is another question. What is the best way to remember what I've been studying, especially for a test? So what are those organizational skills that students can incorporate into their into how they study for tests or complete assignments?
Okay. So my biggest one is even before my TBI, I was not a good retainer of information or comprehension. So what I found my biggest thing was is highlighting important facts. Found that really, really good. And then the other thing is I found after my TBI, if I could repeat things, that I would remember them better. So what I would do when I was studying, and believe it or not, I did continue to do the courses that I am doing now after my TBI. And what I did was I highlighted all the important information, and then I would type it out, and then I would just kind of work away out on that. So again, what I was doing was I was taking, say, a 5-page document that was giving me all this information, and I just simplified it again. So just break it down into steps and repeat it. And I found if I repeated it, that was the best way. The other thing I did find is that if I could listen to stuff audio, so let's say that you did put down 15 really important things to go into this test with, right? Then read them onto record or whatever device you want to use, and then listen to that. And if I kept listening to it, then I could remember it. So, and then you're closing your eyes again, so you're not getting that visual exhaustion again.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of trial and error is finding what works, trying strategies that may have worked for someone, they may not work for you. We hear a lot that people living with brain injury have a challenge reading books. Well, there's the audible books, which is a solution. But I think everyone needs to find out what works for them, and they may have to try a few things and try different strategies, but and keep on trying, I think.
Like I think that's the biggest thing. Like you said, just keep on trying the different ways, and for everybody it's different. My daughter's had a few concussions and she has a huge sensitivity to her ears, so audiobooks don't work for her, so everybody's different. But yeah, keep plugging away and don't be hard on yourself.
Well, I think that's great words to close with. I thank you so much. This has been, this has been enlightening. We could all use organization. I commend you on all the strategies that it sounds like you've come a long way. I mean, you've had to do a lot of trial and error, but, and you're still trial and erroring. So
exactly.
I thank you so much for being with us today. We sincerely appreciate it. So now we've come to the end of our day. And it's hard to believe that time has passed so quickly. So there's been so much great information today and such engaging and knowledgeable speakers. I want to thank Andre, Kylie, Shiloh, Anne, and Pauline for speaking today. I want to thank our sponsors again for making sure this event could be offered for free of charge for attendees. And I want to thank each and every person that attended this today, and for each person that will watch the recording in the coming days, months, and years. This is truly an amazing community of people, always looking to learn, improve their recovery, and find new coping strategies. We plan to hold future symposium on topics important and relevant to the brain injury community. If you have topic suggestions, we want to hear from you. Please send them to info@braininjurycanada.ca. And thank you again for tuning in, and we hope to see you soon at another Brain Injury Canada event. Thank you so very much. Have a great day.